Big Poppa Pump was one of the wildest personalities in pro wrestling. He stood out right away. Big muscles, bleached blonde hair, chainmail headgear, loud sunglasses, and even louder promos. Some people thought he was entertaining. Most straight away hated him. But was that hate really about his wild personality, or was there something more intense? To find out, we'll have to start from the beginning. Well, early in his career, Scott was seen very differently. He was a serious athlete with real wrestling skills. He wrestled at the University of Michigan and was even an NCAA All-American. That wasn't some gimmick. He brought that same skill into pro wrestling and teamed up with his older brother Rick to form the Steiner Brothers. Fans loved them. They were fast, powerful, and worked like a well-oiled machine. They traveled the world, racked up championships in Japan, and won titles in the US. At that point, Scott wasn't seen as crazy or unpredictable. He was just really good at what he did. But over time, things started to change. In 1998, during a tag match in WCW, Scott turned on Rick. 1 second they were fighting side by side, the next Scott was attacking his brother and joining the NWO. Fans were stunned. It was a huge moment, not just because the team was over, but because Scott was now heading into a new phase of his career, and he wasn't holding anything back. That's when Big Poppa Pump was born. He packed on even more muscle, dyed his hair, started wearing chainmail, and cut wild promos full of yelling, insults, and strange catchphrases. Some of it didn't even make sense, but that didn't stop him. If anything, it made fans talk about him even more. You never knew what he was going to say next. For some people, that was part of the fun. For others, it was exhausting. Now here's what's interesting. That betrayal of Rick, turning on his own brother, was all for the storyline. In real life, the two of them were still close. Rick has said many times he was never jealous of Scott's solo success. He supported him and was proud of him. But even though the heel turn was scripted, the anger behind it was real. Scott had been frustrated with the wrestling world for years. He felt like management didn't respect him and that he deserved better. So when he finally got the spotlight, he didn't play it safe. He went all in. That raw energy made his character unforgettable, but it also made him hard to work with. He wasn't afraid to call people out or get into fights backstage. He said whatever he wanted, and that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. He's even admitted it himself. He said Big Poppa Pump was basically just him pissed off at how things were going. That's probably what made his promos feel so real. He wasn't pretending. He was venting. But this was just the beginning. He started feuding with the biggest names in the industry, and that really got him hated. The most iconic feud, in my opinion, was the Hulk Hogan feud. Now, Scott Steiner's feud with Hulk Hogan wasn't just another wrestling rivalry. It was personal, and it went way beyond anything that happened in the ring. Steiner never hid how he felt. He openly called Hogan out in interviews, on social media, and sometimes even in real life. If there was one person in wrestling that Steiner truly couldn't stand, it was Hogan. And that hatred played a huge part in why some people saw Steiner as out of control or even dangerous. It all started back in the WCW days. Steiner believed Hogan was holding him back. He thought Hogan used his backstage influence to control storylines and protect his spot at the top. Hogan had creative control in his contract, which meant he could say no to almost anything, including losing matches. According to Steiner, Hogan used that power to stop other wrestlers from rising up, and he believed he was one of them. Steiner said he was sick of the way Hogan operated. He didn't think Hogan cared about the business or the younger talent. He called it selfish and said it was killing the spirit of wrestling. But it wasn't just about career jealousy. Steiner claimed he knew things about Hogan's character that made him dislike him even more. He said his close friend Randy Savage had shared stories about Hogan that painted him as manipulative and even racist. Steiner took those stories to heart and never let go of that grudge. The feud went from bad to worse in 2015. During WrestleMania 31 weekend in San Jose, things got serious. Hogan's then-wife, Jennifer, said she had a frightening encounter with Steiner at the airport. She claimed that Steiner approached her at baggage claim, grabbed her arm, and told her he was going to kill Terry, which is Hogan's real name. She said she didn't realize at first who he was, but once she figured it out, she called Hogan right away. Hogan flew into San Jose the next morning and filed a police report. The police launched an investigation and pulled a surveillance video to try and confirm what happened. After that, WWE made the decision to ban Steiner from all WrestleMania weekend events. Hogan requested the ban, and WWE backed him up. That included keeping Steiner out of the Hall of Fame ceremony, which hurt even more considering that his late friend Randy Savage was being inducted that year. Steiner wasn't quiet about any of it. He denied the whole thing. He said he never touched Jennifer Hogan and definitely didn't threaten anyone. According to him, the only thing he did was call Hogan out over the Hall of Fame induction. Steiner believed that Savage never liked Hogan and would have hated the idea of him doing the honors. He admitted to saying something, but insisted it was just words, nothing violent. He went even further. Steiner said Hogan only filed the report to create drama and that the airport security footage would have proven him innocent. He also accused Hogan of backing down once he realized there was no proof of what he claimed. Steiner called him a coward and said it was just another example of Hogan playing the victim while causing the real problems behind the scenes. Nothing ever came of the police report. Steiner wasn't arrested and no charges were filed, but the story had already spread and the damage to his reputation was done. Whether the incident happened exactly the way Jennifer Hogan described it or not, it added to the idea that Steiner was unpredictable and aggressive. That's the thing about situations like this. Sometimes the facts matter less than the perception. Steiner already had a reputation for being intense and confrontational. So when a story like this came out, people were quick to believe it, and WWE's decision to ban him from the event made it look even worse. It made it seem like Steiner really was a threat, even though there was no proof he'd done anything illegal. For Steiner, it wasn't just frustrating, it was infuriating. He felt like he was being punished while Hogan, in his eyes the real villain, got treated like a hero. He used every chance he could to remind people about Hogan's past and question why WWE continued to protect him. Steiner brought up the racism allegations, the politics, and the lies. To him, this wasn't just a one-time incident. It was part of a much bigger problem. Even now, fans still talk about that weekend. Some believe Steiner was wrongly accused. Others think the whole thing was just more proof that he was too volatile for the business. The truth may never be fully known, especially since the airport footage was never made public, but either way, the story stuck. And then came the worst of it all. Scott Steiner has never been the type to hold back. If something bothered him, he said it loudly. That's always been part of who he is. And during his time with TNA, or Impact Wrestling as it's now known, that part of him came out in full force. What started as frustration turned into a full-blown online war with the company. That war ended with a lawsuit, but also gave fans another look at the wild and unfiltered way Steiner handled business. Steiner spent a good chunk of time with TNA, coming and going over the years. He had some big moments, like being part of the Main Event Mafia and winning tag titles. Fans still remember those stretches, but behind the scenes, things weren't so smooth. By 2012, after his last regular run with the company, Steiner had reached a breaking point. He was angry about how things were being handled and made it clear he believed TNA was being ruined from the inside. After his release in March of that year, Steiner went straight to Twitter and started unloading. One tweet after another, calling out the people he thought were responsible. His main targets were Hulk Hogan, Eric Bischoff, and Bruce Pritchard. According to Steiner, they were dragging the company down and doing the same things that had already helped destroy WCW. He compared TNA to the Titanic and said it was sinking fast. In his mind, Hogan and Bischoff were steering it straight into the iceberg. He didn't try to hide his motivation. He said he was trying to save TNA. He believed that the company didn't need people like Hogan or Bischoff calling the shots. He felt like they were abusing their positions, pushing their own ideas, and hurting the younger talent. He was tired of staying quiet about it and was ready to go public with everything he thought was wrong. And go public he did. Steiner's tweets were relentless. He went after Hogan for constantly switching between being a good guy and a villain on screen. He called it sloppy and confusing. He said fans were tired of seeing the same old routine. He also claimed that the company had tried to make talent hand over control of their social media accounts. That didn't sit well with him either. But it wasn't just Hogan and Bischoff. Steiner also took time to defend some of the locker room. He brought up AJ Styles, Bobby Roode, and Kurt Angle, and said that management had treated them badly. One story he told was about AJ being pressured to bleach his hair to look more like Ric Flair. When AJ refused, Steiner claimed the higher-ups turned on him. Whether that story was true or not, it showed how strongly Steiner felt about what was going on backstage. The tweets kept coming, and eventually TNA decided they'd had enough. In June 2012, they filed a lawsuit against Steiner. They said he had violated the terms of his contract by making damaging comments about the company and its staff. Even though his contract had already expired, TNA claimed he was still breaking rules that had been part of his previous deal. They were looking for money and also wanted a court order to stop him from tweeting about them. The company pointed to a section of his old contract that supposedly said he wasn't allowed to talk publicly about TNA, its wrestlers, or its management without getting approval first. They also said they had asked him multiple times to stop tweeting and that he ignored them every time. Steiner didn't back down. He said he never agreed to any kind of gag order and that his contract was long over. He said TNA had tried to offer him a new deal and he turned it down. So as far as he was concerned, they had no right to tell him what he could or couldn't say. The case sat in court for a while. It was scheduled for trial more than once, but never actually made it to that point. In early 2016, a judge in Nashville dismissed it for good. The dismissal was with prejudice, meaning TNA couldn't try to bring it back again. That was the end of it. Steiner was quick to celebrate the win. He even brought up his famous Steiner math promo, joking that his odds of winning were always high. To him, the lawsuit wasn't just a legal fight, it was a chance to stand up for what he believed was right and to prove that no company was going to silence him. What made this whole thing so different from other wrestling conflicts was the way it played out. It didn't happen in the ring or on a promo. It happened online, in real time, for everyone to see. Fans didn't have to wait for the next show, they just had to refresh Twitter. Overall, Scott Steiner's career has always been one that got people talking. Fans were drawn to him for all kinds of reasons. Some loved his crazy look, with the massive muscles and chainmail. Others got a kick out of his wild promos, especially the Steiner math one that turned into a cult classic. It didn't always make sense, but it was unforgettable. That was kind of the point. He was loud, over the top, and never afraid to say exactly what was on his mind. Even when he played the bad guy, people found him entertaining. He had a way of getting under your skin, but you still wanted to hear what he would say next. Catchphrases like, "Holler if you hear me," became fan favorites. And even with all the chaos around him, plenty of fans thought he was smarter than he let on. Some even called him a genius. Others felt he was one of the most underrated wrestlers out there, especially when it came to his early in-ring work and how he could come up with stuff that nobody else dared to do or say. A lot of fans also agreed with him when he took shots at people like Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff. They saw Steiner as someone who wasn't afraid to call out the politics and the ego trips behind the scenes. Whether it was in WCW, WWE, or TNA, he always seemed to be the guy saying what others were thinking but didn't dare to say out loud. Steiner's whole career felt like a mix of jaw-dropping moments and head-shaking drama. He wasn't just a performer, he was a character that kept pushing boundaries, both in and out of the ring. That's part of what made him so divisive. Some people loved him for being honest and real. Others thought he was too much. Either way, he made an impact. Even when he got into fights with management, got banned from shows, or found himself in legal trouble, Steiner kept showing up and doing things his way. That defiant attitude became part of his image. He was the loose cannon who might say anything at any time, and fans couldn't look away. Sometimes it caused problems. Other times, it just made him more popular. And despite everything, Steiner still made it into the WWE Hall of Fame. That says a lot. He spent years going against the system, fighting with big names, and saying things the company probably didn't love. But his legacy was just too big to ignore. He earned his spot not by playing it safe, but by doing everything the hard way. You didn't have to like him, but you remembered him. And in wrestling, that's what really matters. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the wild world of Scott Steiner, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more wrestling stories like this. Got thoughts on Steiner? Love him? Hate him? Drop your take in the comments. We'd love to hear it.